Well, this is the 360th anniversary of the start of the Great Siege of Bolingbroke Castle in 1643, and today is the exact anniversary of the Battle of Winceby, which happened as a direct result of this. So we're actually reenacting both the siege of Bolingbroke Castle and having a commemoration of the Battle at Winceby. Well, we've got living history here in the castle, and there's also a parliamentarian siege camp a little bit further away, just within cannon shot, and there'll be a bit of exchange of fire. We've got drill displays, and we've got a battle at 3:30, which will actually take place outside the castle over a real 17th century fort, probably Britain's only surviving small-scale 17th century infantry fort. Very exciting stuff if you're into that sort of thing. Bolingbroke Castle was a typical medieval castle, which means by the time of the Civil War, it was militarily obsolete. It was still a very strong place, so the Royalists put a garrison of soldiers in here. But in order to protect it from the modern artillery of the time, they were forced to build an outwork of earth and timber, and the latest military design, and incredibly, it survived 360 years later. It's probably the only example in Britain of its size and scope. It's designed to take about a company of infantry, and it's placed exactly where you want to put it to stop enemy gunners from getting the range on the medieval masonry, because they could shoot the castle to pieces, basically. So by building an earth fort, you stop the enemy guns from getting close, and then they have to take that fort before they can take the castle. It really does slow down a besieging force. So this is a really unique chance to see the two types of architecture, 13th century and 17th century, working together.
The castle was built in around 1220 by Randolph de Blundeville, who's Earl of Lincoln at the time, and it's an important example of 13th century architecture. It was used as a principal residence of the Earls of Lincoln and then later the Earls of Lancaster, and Henry of Bolingbroke was born here in 1366 and he became King of England in 1399. And after that, it was never used as a residence again. It was used as an administrative centre until its use in the 17th century for the English Civil War. This is where an event was arranged because it's the 360th anniversary of the actual siege of Bolingbroke Castle. So it's a special anniversary. We've decided to celebrate the history of the castle. It's a very atmospheric site, and the size of the site, allows us to do quite a large-scale reenactment. And we've got about 250 reenactors here today that the public have been able to come and see, so it's been fantastic. We've had small living history events on the castle before, but this is quite large scale for the village and for us to put on, so it's been a one-off really.
I hear the enemy approaching, Master Peter. Whoever's in command, come here and declare yourself. Advance your pike! Right, come on, move! Go on here! Stand! Right, who's in command here?
I am, sir.
And where are you from, sir? Which
I'm
school?
From Horncastle.
Horncastle School, sir?
Yes, sir.
And is Horncastle School for King or Parliament, sir?
Parliament, sir.
Is Horncastle School for King or Parliament, sir?
The King, sir.
Very good, sir. And anyone who's for Parliament, I'm going to
Wrong
chop them
answer.
into little bits and feed them to the dogs and feed them to the crows. And anyone who laughs is going to be fed to the crows. So all you horrible lot behave. Now, this castle here, we're garrisoning for the King. And in this castle, there's lots of nice things and lots of nasty things. So don't touch anything, because it might be sharp and it might cut you, or it might be poisonous and might kill you. So look with your eyes and not with your hands. Now get in good order and prepare to march into the castle. March on!
Right, march.
Come on, keep up! Keep moving. This is the best behaved school I've seen so far. No talking in the ranks, keep up. It's a well-behaved school, that's what I like.
Our job is to defend the musket blocks from the horse.
with our pikes, which is 16 feet long. We charge them at the horse, because horse will not ride into immovable objects, which we are. Hence, the musketeers can go underneath our pikes and be protected. That is our primary job on the battlefield. To handle one of these, you've got to be quite a stout chap. They're very heavy, and you've also got to control them properly, or you can cause more damage to your comrades than the enemy. It is a very physical job, yeah. You've got to be fairly strong and robust, because you're pushed, and obviously we wear the harmour so we don't get stabbed by the contemporary's pike.
I'm going to teach you all how to become pikemen. The first point is the point of order. This is how I'm stood at the moment. So if you can all hold your pikes in your right hand, resting on the floor. This is called order. From the order, we're going to do the advance. 1, 2, 3. Keep it straight up. From advance, we can go into many different positions. The first one I'm going to take you through is the shoulder. Shoulder is what the troops would use when they're marching. Shoulder is 1, 2, 3. Let's see you. Shoulder your pike. 1, 2, 3. Port your pike is holding it at 45 degrees. So let's see you all port your pikes. Yeah. All right. Right, back to the advance. Now, as the battle progresses and the troops start becoming contact with other foot soldiers, the only way pikemen can fight is at charge. Charge is holding your pike horizontal. So let's see you all charge your pike. I'll turn around so you can see what I'm doing. Now, the only thing that I can do now as a pikeman, if I'm being advanced on by other people, is to lunge. Ah! Let's do a lunge. Let's do a proper lunge. Good.
Well, we're musketeers, and the musketeer was the offensive arm of the infantry in the Civil War army. So the musketeers were the firepower, and the pikemen, who have the long sticks, were there really to defend us from the cavalry. So in a battle, you'd have large blocks of musketeers firing volleys at each other from a distance, and then if the fighting got close, they could reverse their muskets and use them as a big club. So then you can club, you've got a nice 14-pound weapon. The musketeers were also equipped with swords, but by all accounts they were mostly used for chopping firewood, because it's far easier just to turn this around and belt somebody than to drop it and draw your sword.
This is the 1640s, it's the Civil War, and it's these that we've got here are modern technology, these muskets. These are as modern technology as the Exocet missile is to you nowadays. Before this, they were heavy, you couldn't carry them, you had to almost put them on your shoulder, or they were cannons. But technology was improving even in those days, and the musket could actually be carried and fired by one man. At the end of the Civil War, there were 2 musketeers to every 1 pikeman, because the commanders were finding that the musket was so efficient. They fight hand to hand. They fight close up to somebody. These musketeers can kill you at 100 yards. That's over 100 metres to you. So hand-to-hand combat was going out, and these people were becoming much more important. Right, what have they got? They've got their regimental issue clothing to start with. From their hats, their coats. The coats give the regimental colour, so we know what regiment they're in. I know immediately that he's a Marquess of Winchester's and he's the Earl of Essex, because of their coat colour. They've got around their shoulders a bandolier. It's a collar, leather collar, with flasks on. Those flasks could be made of tin. If it's a gentleman, it can be very ornately decorated. It could be, have velvet and everything on it. But these being ordinary soldiers, they're just plain wood. Each one of those carries 1 charge of gunpowder. Then they've got, I can reach this one, another one, a larger one, which has got a hole in the end. That's the primer, and that would carry fine ground gunpowder. So the most important thing of the musketeer, his musket. Known as a matchlock musket, because you'll see in their left hand they've got a piece of smouldering rope. That's called match, and that's been treated with a chemical called saltpetre to make it burn slowly and regularly. So we'll start loading this, shall we? Give rest to your muskets. Open your pan, clean your pan, prime your pan, cast off your loose powder, blow off your loose powder. Each one of those is a separate command. Now what they're doing is they're putting a small amount of the fine gunpowder in the pan. Pan is a little dish on the side of the musket, so they put some fine powder there, then they've made certain that none of the gunpowder's sticking around. Otherwise it might go off, as our friend said, it might go off early. Right, now we've got to start loading it. Cast about your musket, trail, handle your charge, charge with powder, charge with ball, put in your wadding. Said each flask has got 1 charge of gunpowder, so they're opening the flask, that's handle your charge. They're putting 1 charge of gunpowder in, then they would take their a musket ball. Quite often they carry them in their mouths, so they could just quickly spit it in, rather than fiddle around. That's the actual ball bag. You imagine how long that would take him to fiddle around and get, that's his musket ball. And you see that little pimple on there? That one's only recently been made. That's where the metal was poured into it in the mould. They bite that off or cut it off with a knife before they were able to use it.
That's where they're saying bite the bullet came from. Bite it off.
Yeah. We've put the gunpowder charge, the bullet and the wadding in. The wadding's there to stop the ball falling out. Got to make sure it's nice and tight down the bottom end. Withdraw your scouring stick, shorten your scouring stick, ram home. Take out your scouring stick, shorten your scouring stick, return your scouring stick. Handle your match, blow your match, cock your match, try your match. Now remember I said the match is a piece of burning rope. When they handle it and blow it, they're making certain that the glowing end of the match hasn't got any ash on it or anything. Something that might fall off and go into the pan, make it go off early, might not be glowing hot enough to fire, so they blow on it. Then they try it, which means move the serpent by hand to make sure that the burning end, the cigarette end, like, of the match goes into the centre of the pan. Then they stand with their fingers over the pan like that. That's called the sentinel guard. That's as if they're on sentry duty. They're ready to fire, but they're protecting the pan with their fingers. Right, just to remind you what's going to happen, they're going to pull the trigger, the serpent is going to move the match into the priming pan, that's going to go, and then it'll go bang. Face to the right about. Present. Give. Fire! Take down your piece.
You can reload and fire at about 2 a minute, but the real limiting factor wasn't so much the speed, it was carrying the gunpowder. Each one of these bottles would have carried 1 charge of gunpowder, and we've got 12 of those, so once you've fired the 12 shots, you'd have to retire and refill these from a powder barrel. And you're also carrying, for each shot, an ounce lead ball, so you've got 12 ounces of lead to carry around as well. So that was the limiting thing for firepower. The other type of gun around used in the Civil War is a flintlock musket, which more people know of, and those were used by specialist people like artillery guards, where you don't want the burning match around the barrels of gunpowder. So the powder stores and guns, the big artillery pieces, they would have flintlocks.
This is a cavalry weapon. It's a one-handed pistol to be used at arm's length. The barrel is about 26-27 inches long, and it's fired by using the same mechanism as a modern cigarette lighter. It has a wheel and a piece of iron pyrites which rests upon it. It's wound up, or spanned is the term, with a tool called a spanner until the internal spring is taut. Rest the hammer with the pyrites on, and when you pull the trigger, the wheel spins and makes the sparks into the priming pan and then into the main barrel and fires the charge. The matchlock is in fact the most reliable of the weapons unless it's raining or windy, in which case, because with the matchlock you have to open the pan before you fire it, you can lose your priming powder or have it go soggy as soon as the rain gets in. With flintlock weapons like this one and the cavalry carbine, the pan is kept closed until the moment of firing, when it flies open, so the powder is kept dry. However, as you may have seen, this one failed to sparken this time. Probably 1 out of 10 at least would have been misfires once we moved into the flintlock and the wheel lock mechanism. They were also far more expensive.
I wouldn't be just the only carpenter. There could be anything up to about 20 carpenters. As you know, everything is made of wood. The gun carriages, the musket stocks, even down to the bottles on the bandoliers of the musketeers. Have you seen the musketeers yet? Yeah. Oh, you have seen the musketeers. The bottles. I don't actually make the bottles. These are actually made by a bodger. A bodger in our period is a person who actually goes and turns wood. He's actually a wood turner. And he would actually go and make these whole, still with a cap on, hasn't been cut off yet. I will actually take them, cut the caps off and then drill the holes. I've got a special drill bit which actually drills out the hole, and when I get to a certain depth I'll then stop. It's got it marked on the drill bit. This is a drill bit, and to actually drill out the hole of that bottle, I use a clamp. And then it's literally just drill out the hole, and not this bit, I haven't got one here at the moment. These bits would actually be marked to how depth I would go to how much powder would be needed for each musketeer. So I'll drill out. Make sure there's no wood in there, and then make sure that the cap fits perfect. And then I've got to make 12 of these for every bandolier, and I've had an order for 100, so I've got 1,200 of these to actually make. That would take me about a week to do properly. The other thing I would make, I suppose, would be the musket stocks. That is going to be the actual mechanism, the trigger, goes straight through the hole. The metalwork I don't do either. I just make the stocks. The metalwork would be done by the blacksmith. He would get the broken musket. I will give this to the blacksmith. He would take all the metalwork off the old broken one and put it straight onto this one. And that's all I would need to do.
Right, do you know what this sort of shop is? Metal? Blacksmiths, well done. Right, does anyone know?
Oh, he's burning the metal.
Does anyone know what we do in a blacksmith shop?
When that sparks up, like
Burn metal. No, not exactly burn metal, no. Right, horseshoes, yeah. Weapons. What else? Horseshoes,
I'm a local blacksmith. I've been brought in by the army. They're paying me about 6 shillings a day, so whoever's paying me the most, I go to them. And my job role is basically making swords and armour, stuff like that. Repairing armour, repairing the kitchen utensils, things like that. I have adze to do and axes, the tree fellas. So there's lots of bits and pieces for me to do. My apprentice comes in here at 5 o'clock in the morning. before the sun rises, lights the forge. He cuts all the metal up ready for me to walk in at 6 and then start pounding, and I'm here until dusk. By that time, in the summer months it's brilliant because you have like this great big long day, and in the winter it's even better because you have shorter days. But it's the best place to be in the winter because it's so warm, so and you do sweat. And as you see behind me, there's the great bellows that are operated by a handle. As the handle's pulled down, air from the bottom chamber comes into the top, through the chew iron into the firebox. That's where we put the metal to heat it up. We use charcoal or coal, something like that, anything we can get our hands on. Because there is 2 chambers, you can have a constant airflow all the time, so the temperature inside the firebox will get to about 880 to about 1500 degrees C, so it can get very hot and you do sweat.
But if we've got a bit of square bar, we want to make it into a round bar, we use this. Then anyone know what it's called? It's called a swage. Bring it over, put it in there, put that on top, then you get the sledgehammer,
you bang on top,
and then you hit it. Right. And then once that bit is round, you move the work in, keep moving it, keep hitting it. And next thing, you've got a nice round piece of metal that you can bend, do whatever, make into a poker. Yeah? Does everyone understand that?
Yeah.
Nod heads.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone don't understand?
Most of the soldiers don't know what to do with a sword anyway, apart from kill a chicken and maybe cut down a tree. To them it's just something that they hang on the side of their belt. It's only the officers that like all the fancy ironwork like you see here, because they're the ones that know how to use a sword and actually kill with it. Other than that, you just basically throw it together. After all the killing's been done, and more than likely the soldiers will come back and say, can you repair this? I've got a hole in my armour, can you repair that? So I'll be here until dusk tonight.
Hello. You've had a good time so far? Yes. Right then, my job is to do horrible things to you. Not horrible things, we're trying to save your life. But what I do sometimes is a bit horrible. Have you seen the musketeers yet?
Yes.
Right, so you know what this is? Musket ball, okay. Do you know what it's called? 12 gauge musket ball. Do you know why? Because 12 of these make 1 pound in weight, okay? We did some experiments. Look at this one here. It's a musket ball. Can you see the musket ball here? This one has been fired from a gun into a pile of sand at 50 metres. And that's what we dug out. Can you see it? Look at that. And we fired at 20 metres into some oak logs. Oak is a very, very hard wood. From that way there. Can you see?
In the middle.
So, if it does that to sand at 50 metres, it does that to oak at 20 metres. What do you think happens if it hits you? Ow? Or a double ow? Triple ow. I'll go with that. Quadruple ow. Okay then. This here is a 17th century X-ray machine called probe. The pointy bit goes into the hole made of musket ball, and you wiggle round to find out where the musket ball's gone. When you found the musket ball, you get a pair of bills like these ones here. Feel the ends. Can you feel the teeth? It's on both sides. Can you feel? Can you feel the teeth? Feel the teeth? That's so you can get grippy bits. That's the grips. Right, I can't show everyone, but you can tell. Right, can I just, what I can do is, just hang on a sec. That's a good question. I'll ask you in a minute. I'll tell you that in a second. You can grab hold of that. Look, I can grab hold of that quite well, can't I? And that goes in the hole in the wound, and you get out the musket ball. You see? This here is called a cauterizing iron, or cautery iron. This is heated up till it is red hot, and then you put it in the hole. And you asked me a question just before, didn't you? What was the question you asked me?
How do you put people to sleep?
How do you put people to sleep? Do you know what the answer is? You don't. All you do is given one of these to bite on. You see teeth marks?
Yeah.
Alright?
Yeah.
That's all you're going to get. No alcohol, no drinks, no putting to sleep, nothing. Just that. Okay? Just for the operation. Terrible that, isn't it? Hopefully you passed out. This is called a dismembering knife. Are you listening very carefully? Dismembering is a posh word for amputation. Amputation is a posh word for cutting it off. So what we're going to do is listen very, very carefully. When the point is pointing up, it is upside down. When the point is pointing down, it is the right way up. Got it? So let's use it that way. What we do is the point of the knife is pressed down into the limb until you hit bone or bones. You then, in a circular motion, go round the limb to come back where you started.
And that's chopped off, then you get a sword.
No.
Because you got to go through the
Wait a minute. What happens next is the assistant who's holding the arm to stop and control the bleeding, hold it very tight. He yanks back the skin and muscle to split open the cut so you can see the bones. Isn't that gross?
Yeah.
Oh.
No. Yes, it is. No. How do you like it?
Oh. That's it then. This then we saw through the bone or bones, and because he pulled it back, what we do next is we cauterise the wound to stop the bleeding with a hot iron, again heated up on the end, and then the skin is let go, and now because it's pulled back, the skin is longer than the bone, so it dropped down over the end, a bit like Granny's jumper at Christmas, you know. And that's how it was done. Sorry?
Have you ever done that?
What do you think?
Yes. I've done it loads of times.
Well, I know how to do it.
What about if I have a nice sticking in it? What? Are you on the hospital, Mum? Take it out.
I am a barber surgeon. That's my job. And the gun going off means that is the end of our talk.
Well, thank you very much.
If you want to know more, do you know what you have to do?
Come back.
Come back tomorrow with your mum and dad. It's free. And you can talk to me longer and you'll see a battle as well. Okay? Okay then.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Be safe. Thanks ever so much. Okay. I'll do it at least twice.
Now, if you're very wealthy, you would have servants who could lace you into your clothes. So a very wealthy lady would have a gown that laces at the back. Can you see that? And then she'd put another garment over the top of that, so you can see that that lady has got servants to help her into her garments. Do you want to hold that and just feel the weight of that? Do you want to pass it around to the other children so they can get their bodies down?
Obviously, I need grooming things. I have a comb that's made of horn. Do you want to look at that, young man? Pass it around. A block of wax to wax my moustache with. A seal for sealing my letters.
Sounds like a lady's handbag, this. The contents of.
A knife, fork and spoon.
He's very
to eat my dinner
continental.
with. I have a fork. I have a plate. And a cup. Also made of horn. Now horn is quite tough material, it's flexible. You want to pass it round? And I also have a snuff box, which I'm not passing out. And a little bowl made of horn for eating pottage from and things like that. Right. Yes.
How come you've got so many items made of horn?
Because I come from part of the country where there's good horn maker. And all
Horn's
the
a
thing
very
about
tough
horn is very
material.
useful material to have. They last a long time, they're durable, they're fairly cheap, they're convenient things. It's very convenient material to make things from. So I carry that with me. Wherever I go, I can eat my dinner, do my hair, all the other things necessary for a gentleman.
Metal? What sort of metal?
Steel.
No, dummy. No. No.
Lead.
No.
Steel.
No. What would money be made of? What's precious?
Silver.
Silver.
And gold.
Silver. Because silver is precious. See, that is a piece that is underweight. Yeah? Because what happens is there are people who do that to these coins. Can you see that edge? Yes, they cut a bit off the edge.
Why?
And they save it. And they cut a bit off of every coin that they come across. Eventually they have enough to make another shilling. They counterfeit it. They forge it. If they're caught, they will have their hand chopped off for doing so. But it is precious. And that is why you have to be very, very careful when dealing with money to make sure that you are getting your true value and your true worth.
Good morning to you all. My name's Mistress Ball. I'm the sutler. Now, what it means if I'm the sutler is that I actually feed the garrison. Now, you've just seen the quartermaster come factor, and he's told you about all the things that he's actually had to buy. Once he's bought them, I actually make sure that everybody gets to eat them. Now, what you can see on my table are the foods that we actually give to the soldiers. On my left are the foods for the officers, on my right the foods for the soldiers. You see quail's eggs, you see a chicken that has been roasted, there is smoked sausage and pies and manchet bread. Now, the soldiers have carter bread. Now, what's the first thing you can see as a difference between the two?
One's darker and one's lighter.
One's darker, one's lighter. The carter bread has nothing taken out. The miller has done very little to it apart from grind the grain. The manchet bread he's had to do a lot of work on. It's had to be threshed, and all that's left is the pure grain, and that's why it's so white, and that's why it costs more, because it's labour intensive.
This is all we get, and we're going to go into battle today. The officers are certainly getting better. Expect us to die for it? Disgraceful.
Apart from the soldier's carter bread, that's his penny loaf that he has each day, he also has a pound of cheese. Now, this is Cheshire cheese. It's the only English cheese that's a hard cheese that can travel around the country. There are no other hard cheeses. The only other cheese we have are farmhouse cheeses, where each farm makes its own cheeses. No, cheddar doesn't make cheese. It's going to take them another 70 years before they start making cheese. So this is made by local farms, and every farm makes its own cheese from its own cattle. We have dates which have come from North Africa. They've travelled a long way. We have a quince paste, which the officers use to eat with their meats. We have figs, which again have come from abroad. And we have fruit leather. Now, the fruit leather is made from plums or any other fruit and honey. There is nothing else in it, and that will last a year. It will keep that long. And because we're under siege, we don't know how long we're going to have to stay inside. And once the soldiers are outside trying to stop us getting out, we won't be able to get out for more food. So we have to make sure that we've got everything we need. Another way of preserving is drying. That's why we have dried apples. Oh, don't say You eat fresh apples, do you not?
Yeah.
Then why not eat them when they're dried? We can eat them either as dry, or we can put them into water that has been boiled. You can see that they're not used to the idea of dried foods or very spiced foods. A lot of the foods are quite alien to them. I have in one part of my stores dried apples. I was told by them that they were banana chips. Now, I ask of them what are banana chips, for I know not what these are, and yet they did not recognise apple rings as apple rings that were dried. We use a lot of spices. Although they are very expensive, the need for that is we have a very savoured tooth. It's a very sweet tooth. A lot of the spices are quite sweet, and it helps the food to actually be sweet enough to our palate. It also helps to give variety. A lot of the spices also help to preserve the meats or fruits, and therefore we use them a lot in all our cooking. Fortunately, we had a month to supply ourselves before the garrison came under siege. And for that reason, we are at the moment able to eke it out. But we don't know how long we will be under siege. So as the days progress, it may become more and more difficult.